Well, good day, folks. This is Eric Rollins, the constitutionalist, coming to you live from the podcast layer. It's time to vote, folks. California's on a precipice, and I really think it could go either way, but I'm generally hopeful if we get out and vote, because I do believe that we can change things. This is called the Golden State for a reason, and I've got a young man that has decided he needs to step up. He is running in Senate District 14, which is kind of Merced, Western Fresno County, a whole lot of Madera County. Welcome, Darin DuPont.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm glad to. So why would you run?
You know, California is at a time where my generation really needs to start standing up. My generation is struggling to step into that first house, build that family, build that sense of community. My generation is struggling to realize that American dream, and we have to start standing up and advocating for ourselves.
So it's not just a cost of living. It's if you want your kids to have a good future, you need to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I have a daughter that's a year and a half. And so when I was also thinking about running for this seat, I thought about what California would look like when she was my age. And it was kind of scary. So it's also setting up the foundation for the next generation to have the ability to realize that American dream.
Your district is primarily driven. The economic driver would be agriculture. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
And what percentage would be agriculture? You have a guess?
I would say roughly about 80 to 90% is agriculture and everything that we do, because it encapsulates the west sides of Merced County, Madera County, and Fresno counties, which is in large part ag land.
Okay. So if that's your main economic driver, we've got a problem, because California policy does not seem to want to preserve water for anything except for flushing all of those solid wastes and partially processed wastes out of the Delta. A lot of that comes from cities surrounding the Delta. We don't build the infrastructure. We don't maintain the infrastructure of canals, so there's lots of seepage. The only good part of that is it does go in the groundwater system. But water's not getting to where it needs to be. How do we fix this?
Yeah, we need to be more flexible. I mean, in 2018, we had the what we call the SED that came out that I was starting to tell water districts, you're gonna have to start doing 40% unimpaired flows. We just know sitting here today that science is just not helpful, not only to the farmers, but it's not helpful to the species as well. And now, by really bureaucrats and unelected workers in the state are telling us, you can't divert water not only on the surface water side, but now that we have Sigma on the groundwater side as well, we're going to see enforcement starting to happen here in the next couple of years of Sigma, and it's going to take a huge toll on the Central Valley, seeing ag land fallowed because there's just not enough water to go around.
So we have the water to grow the crops, but we're refusing to use that water to grow the crops. Is that a fair way to put that?
Yeah, we have a water management issue. We can always get better at our water infrastructure and increasing our capacity so that we can both serve the species and the farmers, but it's really a management issue that we're flushing water to the Delta and either to the ocean or really down south as well. It's complicated issues because in the Central Valley, there are cities that are in different water districts and different water areas. California's water system is very complex.
Absolutely very complex, and I've looked into this, and I don't want to necessarily get into those weeds, but how, if you were elected, how could you help make a difference?
We need to be more flexible on the use of groundwater and surface water. So because we kind of have handcuffed both sides of the groundwater side and the surface water side, has not allowed us to be flexible. So what does that mean? It means when we have excess surface water, what are we doing with that excess surface water? Are we allowing it to continue to flow through the ocean, or can we divert it during storms and store it in our groundwater systems, right? And when we have not a lot of surface water, can we use our groundwater systems to help alleviate the difference from what we're getting in our surface water? We don't really allow that right now. We kind of just restrict both sides of the surface water and the groundwater, which doesn't allow for the flexibility. We also need to update our science that we're using, and really listen to those that are local instead of those that are in Sacramento, because those in Sacramento are dictating the terms of how we use water, and it's not beneficial for how we grow food here in the Central Valley.
Well, a lot of it is environmental regulation, but I want to point out that I'm pretty sure everybody I've met today needs to eat. So I don't see it as we're wasting water. It is absolutely an essential thing that we turn water into food.
Oh, it's very much essential. I mean, we as a state and as a region in the Central Valley provide a lot of food, not only locally. I think we forget that when we talk, is we always say, well, we export a lot to not only other states in the nation, but also other countries. But locally, we have fresh food right here in the Central Valley. And I went to school in East Coast in Virginia, and realized that difference between having a fresh fruit here from the Central Valley versus having fruit in the East Coast. So if we continue to fallow land and continue to restrict farmers from really running their business, because we talk about water, but there's a whole business side as well, that really bites at their margins. It makes it very difficult to run a farm in California. If we start to see more farms going away, more land being fallowed, it becomes a very much a national security issue and a state security issue, because we have to start relying on foreign countries for food.
Not just water, but the other big thing is regulation. How do you fix the regulatory mess? Because it's each water district there's a regulatory mess. And then there's all of these rules that farmers have to follow, like flood irrigation isn't generally allowed, yet it's the only way to recharge. Well, it's not the only way. It is the primary way that they used to recharge aquifers. Now everything's drip, and that only penetrates about 4 feet.
Right. So it's allowing farmers to do what they believe is best for their farm. Deregulation is very important, and it's not just on the water side, but it's also on air quality side and deregulation and the driving of costs. It's also policy and regulation on labor. We saw that currently what the overtime laws are for farm workers has actually reduced the amount of hours that farm workers are working, because farmers can't pay the overtime wages. And California State Legislature continues, even this year, denied the chance for really the bill that Senator Grove put up to be heard on fixing this issue. So there's a lot of regulations that need to be removed so that farmers can go back to farming, and not have to always pencil out, if they're going to make money or not for their family this year, because it's the margins are getting thinner and thinner, and that only impacts the yields that we see coming out of the fields.
Not just that, but we have a cost crisis in California. If you make it more expensive for a farmer to produce whatever it is, we still got to have some of that, and because we've got to eat, and now all of a sudden cost of living goes up. Here's
Correct.
a great way. If water was abundant, food could be cheaper, and we can grow it more efficiently here than almost anywhere else in the world. So why would we not use this opportunity?
Yeah, and we see it kind of not only on the water side, the land side, the labor side, but when we talk about gas prices, diesel, of where diesel prices are right now, that all impacts indirectly farming.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we forget about that, is all these ancillary costs that it costs not only farmers and businesses in California. And if they can't pencil it out, they start to lose money year in and year out and start to close, small local farming operations. And when that happens, it also impacts small communities, because a lot of times those farmers and the generations of families had supported the small communities in education, or in other aspects. And so when we even talk about gas prices, we're talking about impacts to farmers and to businesses.
Well, you can't fix this one alone. So who would your allies be to potentially get something through the legislature that was a help rather than a hindrance? Because a lot of what I see come through is just a hindrance.
When you think about the state legislature, the Bay Area and LA hold a large majority of the representatives. So you have to work with those areas that are seeing the same impacts, even in urbanized areas or districts that may have urbanized areas and farmland or open land. So you have to work across the aisle with those representatives that represent farming, and also educate them, because in a lot of ways, they may not know the impacts that the policies are having to farms, or they do know and they just don't want to help. And so it's working with those that are trying to find solutions for their communities, that are community-based solutions, not Sacramento-based solutions.
We've got an assemblyman locally, actually more than one, Ali Macedo and David Tongapa, who regularly go to social media to get out a message to try to educate people about what's happening in Sacramento. Now, I get they're not in your house, assuming you're elected to Senate. Do you consider that an effective way of communicating with the people?
I grew up in a generation that, we had social media from when I was in middle school, really. And so for me, social media is important to get out the information, especially for my generation and how they receive information. So it's super important what Assemblyman Tangapa has been doing in providing more information, really opening our eyes to what goes on in Sacramento, allows us just to be more informed, not only as voters, but as the public as well, to call for accountability in where we're spending our money or where our priorities are. So using social media to market information, to push information is really important in my generation.
Cost of living is one of the big things I hear from friends, family. I run a small business, just talking to people. How can we reduce costs here in California?
Well, as small business, I mean, I own a small business. I own a law firm with 3 other partners. Not only do I see the business side, but I also see, as a advocate and as an attorney for small businesses, the real difficulties they're going through. Not only on like the direct costs to run a business, the cost of gas, or the cost of food, or the cost of service they're providing. It's also the cost of litigation. In a lot of ways, these small businesses are more susceptible to being sued, and you have to put that in your budget. And so when you're running a small business in California and you find one lawsuit at your doorstep because we live in a litigious state, that's a 6-figure settlement that you're going to have to figure out comes out of your budget. And small businesses just, they don't find that money a lot of ways. So we also have to look at how we're allowing for this litigious state to continue, because it doesn't always impact the outcome that I think the state legislator thought of. It actually impacts attorneys that are just making money off this niche area.
City of Clovis just went through this. We had to move to districts. We used to have every one of our council members at large, and they claimed that there was racism, but the attorney that brought the suit had literally zero evidence that we were being racist in how we were electing people. By the way, when he brought the suit, our mayor happened to be Hispanic, and that seems to be his biggest claim. It's insane to me that we're looking at the color of our skin. But the bigger issue is the city of Clovis lost that, and it cost us several $1 million just to settle. And other cities have fought this, and we looked at it and decided we couldn't fight this. This is a great example of how government control from Sacramento is affecting our ability to define our own destiny. I'm sure, Merced, you have similar stories.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects where you see this going on. You see in, for example, like PAGA lawsuits. The attorneys are actually sometimes making more money than the actual people that they're representing in the PAGA lawsuits. That's not what the state legislature intended, but it's the unintended consequences that the state legislature doesn't think about because they haven't been in it, right? Like they haven't worked in the area to know, okay, this is going to be an unintended consequences is we're actually just going to fund attorneys and create other industries within the legal field when we do legislation like this and create policy like this. It's just not thought out. And then there's no recourse in helping that. So when we see that more attorneys are making money on PAGA lawsuits than the actual people that they're representing, there hasn't been any reform to help that. And so I think that's really important as well. I'm not here to help attorneys get more money. I'm helped to solve problems and provide solutions. So there's some reform in some areas that need to happen as well.
The other big issue I continually hear about is safety. Whether it's perception or not, people are often afraid of homeless. Not all of them are dangerous, but the long-term homeless, they don't really want to be in housing because they want to be able to do whatever they want to do. It might be a mental health issue. It might be a drug issue. Most likely it's something combined. They're one else aspect of feeling safe. How do we fix that? Does housing first work? That's Gavin's mantra.
Oh, we can talk about housing, I guess, but it's kind of a holistic approach. I mean, housing is a piece of that, but there's a whole thing, there's whole aspects in housing that we need to reform to allow for housing to be built at a faster pace. We just don't really allow that right now. So that's one piece. However, it's also allowing our district attorneys and our sheriffs and our police departments to actually do their jobs, right? So in a lot of ways, you don't see enforcement because once you cuff them and book them, they're back on the streets maybe the next day or within the day. So that's another problem is we don't allow, because we're soft on crime from the state side, our district attorneys to actually prosecute really across the board in crime.
Okay, so I'm going to make this personal for you. You got a daughter. You mentioned her. I'm sure you do anything to protect her. So if you had a magic wand, what do you do to fix this so that she can be safe?
You allow district attorneys to charge and get rid of the soft on crime system of not allowing them to hold people accountable. It's also, for example, we passed Prop 36 by a large margin, and the state legislature and the governor has failed to actually invest funding in that aspect. So even though the voters said, yes, we want to hold people more accountable, pass Prop 36. It hasn't been funded. So when a program hasn't been funded, there's the results are not there. So it's twofold, both on the district attorney side, because you get law enforcement that is just tired of needing to deal with problems because they're going to, again, like I said, cuff them and book them, but they're going to be out because there's going to be no charge against them. So it's allowing the district attorney to hold people accountable, and removing some of the soft on crime bills, as well as funding Prop 36.
On day one, you have a magic wand. You're there up in the Senate, and you could fix one thing. What's an easy win for you?
Oh, it's suspend the gas tax. I think that's by far.
Wait, you got a smile on your face on that. And I think probably everybody else did.
Yeah. Suspend the gas tax, because that one, it impacts everyone. It's not just, oh, this will help businesses versus, oh, this is help farmers, or this will help farm workers. It literally helps everyone. From day one, you suspend the gas tax and you start to build accountability in, if we're going to tax you through gases, through your gas, then that money needs to go directly back to our infrastructure. And, I wouldn't have such a big issue with the gas tax if we had the best roads, the best highways, the best state roads in all of the nation.
We haven't in your lifetime, I'm betting.
We're taxed as though we should, right? And
Yes.
we just don't. And so suspend the gas tax, sends 76 cents on every dollar that you would get back in your gas. And so that's
plus the
money right back in your pocket.
The prevailing sales tax, which they build in.
Yeah.
It's 76, but it's more than that, because you're also paying sales tax always on it. And we have got the worst roads in a whole lot of the area that's your district.
Yeah.
The farm roads are bad. The city roads are bad. It's an embarrassment. And it's kind of a monument to Gavin's incompetence.
And it's just bad policy, right? And they talked about doing a vehicle mileage tax as well. Funny enough, with the vehicle mileage tax, a lot what was being said on the left was, well, this will be to replace the gas tax. But in no legislation since the vehicle mileage tax legislation, and now ancillary to that, any legislation after that has come out to suspend the gas tax or stop the gas tax. So now they're moving forward with a vehicle mileage tax in a study and implementation. We can't forget the and implementation part of that legislation, because they want to say it's a study. It's things like this that really impact the Central Valley, of money leaving the pockets of individuals and going to Sacramento, and a lot of times not coming back to our local jurisdictions to fix our local streets or our sidewalks, or infrastructure that we desperately need to be fixed.
There's a huge problem in California with unemployment. It's higher than the rest of the nation, but the biggest part of that problem lives in the Central Valley. We have almost double California's average unemployment rate, which is higher than the rest of the nation. How can we get government out of the way to fix this?
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit. Is there's so much regulation on businesses that when they start to look at their books and look at their budget, it becomes very expensive to run a business in California. It becomes very expensive to keep the doors open. And when that happens, you see businesses closing, you see them moving out of California, you see people leaving, which directly impacts places like the Central Valley. When you are not pro-business and have policies that are pro-business to allow business to do what they do, you have industry gaps. And so it's also working with our education system, both university university side. I have UC Merced and Fresno State are the big universities that are close. UC Merced is in the district. Fresno State is close to the district, to work on bridging those industry gaps. And it's also using community colleges as well. Our product of Merced Community College. So working with the community colleges to bridge industry gaps, as well as find new industries that would be interested in coming to the Central Valley. The other aspect is we kind of have cheap land compared to Bay Area and LA. So if we can bring industries into the Central Valley, moderately, we can find new industries for people to move into.
Well, we have relatively cheap cost of living, relatively inexpensive land, but we often don't have the employees that are educated in the way that they need to be.
Correct. And it's working with, like I said, the community colleges and the UC to bring that education up. So it's not only educating the people that are here locally in the Central Valley and ensuring that they stay here, because it's working with partners and building, private and public partnerships to bring a project here, an industry here, and then also have the public sector and community colleges and the university to provide the employment and educational level that a private industry may need. So it's bridging those gaps that we need to actively be working on, not just passively hope comes to the Central Valley, but actively be working on to build those relationships.
I think one of the things we need is, instead of necessarily just college education, there's a whole lot of opportunity in the trades, and a lot of those are good paying jobs. AI is not going to take the job of a plumber. Most people don't want to be a plumber, but guess what? You can have a very successful life, and they might make more than a lot of lawyers being a plumber. I know some plumbers that, man, they're doing well, but life is tough. So we got to look at that aspect also. My producer just flashed the cutest picture. It looks like you're at a rodeo or something.
Yeah.
And you are with your, I assume, wife.
Yep.
And your daughter is swinging through the air. That is the coolest photo.
Yeah. I mean, this is the reason why I wanted to run for Senate. Not only, the Central Valley kind of way of life of ensuring that we can continue the good work that we do in the Central Valley, but that she's the reason as well. I mean, her generation, we are setting them up to fail drastically, worse than what my generation has been set up to do, and ensuring that we can set them up for success is really important. And we have to start changing the way in which we approach issues. We've had one party and rule for half of my lifetime, 15 years, and we've got a higher cost of living, more difficult to find housing. Everything a part of life is becoming more and more difficult. We have to start choosing a different path, start choosing a different generation to lead us, because the current one is not working.
Well, I'm part of that older one, but I am trying to make a difference because I realize California is broken. But I appreciate the fact that I know so many young, smart, talented, energetic young men and women that want to change the world. What inspired you? What started you on this path of, I need to be part of government? Because, you're a city councilman. This didn't just happen today.
Yeah. It's really seeing my community wanting more. From the very beginning, I'm born and raised in the Central Valley. I love the Central Valley. I went to school on the East Coast and finished my bachelor's degree at George Mason. Went to law school at McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento. And I always wanted to come back home because I wanted to advocate for my community. I mean, you can really change people's people's lives by advocating for them, both in the legal field, but also as an elected representative. And I saw my city of Merced, really not having the correct priorities. Our roads were deteriorating. We were looking at our police department. We were investigating our police department. The city council had voted on that. And so it was a change. It was a needed change to support our public safety, reinvest in our roads and our sidewalks, start advocating for a brighter future for Merced. And we're currently on that path. And so it's kind of just continuing that basic of advocating for my community and really bringing new information and better advocacy for the Central Valley and for my community because we need it.
In Clovis, we took a different path during COVID. I believe Atwater also did with Mayor Paul Crichton, where we didn't shut down for very long, where government got out of the way of business and enabled business. And in both cases, the power of local changed. People changing one little piece. You can't fix the whole problem.
Yep.
We've got a giant elephant in front of us. We got to take one bite at a time.
Yeah. And really this election is just that. It's just one bite at a time, right? We could get lucky and get out of the super minority as Republicans in both the Assembly and the Senate. There's 4 seats that we need in the Senate side to get out of the super minority. If we pick up, Senate District 14, what I'm running for, and Senate District 16, which is the other Senate district in the Central Valley, we could flip 2 seats. And then we're moving to what we need as balance. Mm-hmm. We don't need to swing all the way to the right and have a super majority for Republicans, but we need to bring balance back to Sacramento. So it's starting one step at a time to flip some of these seats, because balance allows us to ensure that, things like Prop 50 or your taxes or the budget actually have a different voice other than one party. Because right now, as a supermajority, only one party can dictate and will dictate what the terms of all that is.
No, that's one of the most frustrating things, because it means that even insane legislation, stuff that is completely disconnected with the common man and common sense, can get through. And I don't know that Gavin Newsom has a moral center. I think he sees everything through the lens of power because he's the ultimate narcissist. So he will sign anything that he thinks there's political advantage. It doesn't matter whether it's good for the people. If we had more balance, there'd be some checks and balances like it was designed.
Correct. And that's the most important thing, is having the checks and balance, right? The Republican side will not always be right, and the Democrat side is not always be right, but we can bring legislation and policy to the center to help everyone, not just one side. And right now it's just really helping one side to continue to obtain and retain that power in Sacramento. And so we can say, well, we have moderate Dems out there that will work with you. But until you actually start to change the party from within to bring the whole party back to the center and back to a balance, it's not going to work. California has to change and really has to send a message to Sacramento. We want to change, because if not, then Sacramento is going to continue to do what it does. The left is continuing going to move farther left, and they're just going to retain and obtain more and more power and dictate the terms of our lives, right? We see this on the city council and local jurisdictions of the state telling us time in and time out of, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, but we're not going to pay for it. You have to pay for it. Well, that just impacts us from putting more police on the street or bringing more firefighters or fixing your local roads. If we have to continue to pay for what the state is telling us to do, which most of the time doesn't lead to any outcomes. It just leads to more paper. Then we lose out in using that funding for actual difference makers, like repaving a road or reconstructing a road, or putting another firefighter on the streets to help serve our community members.
A great example of that, city of Clovis, and I'm sure every city is being forced to make all of their larger vehicles like trash trucks and buses, if you have buses, be electric.
Yeah, zero.
Well, they only last about half, they can only work about half a day. So you need twice as many to have the same surface, and they cost more than double.
Correct. Yeah. So,
and they don't last as long.
Yeah. Well, and
I mean, this is the kind of insanity that we're being faced with on day to day in our lives.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, the private sector, they were under the same requirements until about 2 years ago. So when the private sector doesn't have the incentive to improve the industry doing the research, the costs will continue to stay high, right? So for a refuse truck that is gas powered or diesel powered, it costs about $450,000. If you want an electric zero emission refuse truck, it's going to cost a little over $1 million. So that's $600,000 in difference. We have roughly about 24 refuse trucks in the city of Merced. We're going to have to buy 48 because even if it does last a full day, it's going to have to take a full day to charge. So a day on and day off, and that's
assuming you have a way to power it.
Correct.
PG&E is telling the city of Clovis, look, we don't have it.
Yeah.
And the city of Clovis is pretty much, I see it as kind of a shining jewel. We are economically successful, and yet PG&E is telling us, no, we can't get you the power.
Yeah.
We need common sense in Sacramento.
You also still have to put in the infrastructure, right? So you have to put in all the charging infrastructure, which, no cities really have. And it takes up a lot of space. So then you have to also build more space for your refuse trucks. And I'm just talking about refuse trucks, right? So we're talking about real costs to the cities that will eventually have to be passed down to the consumer. So those that, want trash collection, it's going to have to be passed down to the consumer in rate.
I got to tell you, everybody wants trash collection. Maybe not the homeless, but everybody else does.
Yeah, and that's
so. This is
just the part is it'll be passed down to ratepayers, and that's just more money out of your pocket, and it's more and more every single time.
We're down to about 5 minutes, so I don't want to neglect to have you give contact information. Where do they find out more about you? Where are your social media handles? Things like that.
Yeah. So my website is DuPont for Senate. For is FOR, Senate.com. I have all social medias. So, from Facebook to Instagram to X and to TikTok, I have social medias across the platforms. So follow me on social media. All the updates that I give is really through social media. Website, you can find, the platform and information and issues as well as endorsements that have been made in this race. And then also a place to help donate and contribute to this campaign. We're working really hard to change this seat, and we really have an opportunity to do so. So those are all the platforms that I'm on.
Well, plus you're the only option besides an Esmeralda.
Correct. So there's two Esmeraldas, and then I'm running in the seat. I'm the only Republican running in the seat. So we'll see this June the two top vote getters move on to the general, and then we'll continue to work through the general to make some of these changes happen.
Why are you hopeful?
Well, I'm hopeful because I think not only my generation, but people throughout the Central Valley are waking up, are seeing, the information that Assemblyman Tangapa is putting out, and Assemblywoman Macedo is putting out. When I am walking houses in the district, a lot of what people say is affordability is one of the highest issues. Well, we've had one party in charge in Sacramento, and they haven't been able to work on the affordability issue, even though they say they have. And then also is the lack of accountability for waste, fraud, and abuse. We see throughout California and really throughout the nation the waste, fraud, and abuse that has been happening, and really a lack of accountability coming from Sacramento, from the Attorney General's office to hold people accountable. Actually, the people that we've seen been held accountable been coming from the federal government and not the state government. So I'm hopeful that people see these issues and are wanting change and wanting a different path, because these issues aren't impacting you as a Republican or a Democrat or no party preference. It's impacting everyone. It's impacting all of our pocketbooks, and so we need to choose a different path. And I think people want to do that.
We have a vote by mail system. Obviously, we can't fix it right now. I don't like a vote by mail system, but it's the easiest it's ever been for somebody to vote. How is it that people aren't voting? You're going out and you're knocking on doors. What are they telling you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of lack of trust in the system, right? Like, my vote's not going to matter, or something's going to happen to my ballot. So if there's a lack of trust in the system, what I say is fill out your ballot and take it directly to the elections department, directly to an elections box outside of the county building.
So the postman doesn't touch it.
Correct. Take it directly to those vote boxes, because there's a higher probability that there's that lack of trust will go away. And then it's also track your ballot. There's an ability to track your ballot and see if it's been counted. I have tracked my wife's, and have tracked some of my friends as well that have asked me to. And there's an ability to track your ballot. It will come up if there's an issue. If there's a signature issue, it will come up. Then you can go down to your elections department and clear up that issue early, not have to wait for someone to maybe reach out to you. So it's being proactive in the system as well, to ensure that your vote is counted.
We're down to just about 30 seconds. Contact information one last time, and any last thing you want to say to people?
Yeah, so DuPont for Senate, Darin DuPont on social medias, or DuPont for Senate on social medias, and all the fours are FOR. The one thing that I want to say to voters is, it's time to choose a path that will bring California back to the golden state that it once was. It's not a choice of Republican or Democrat or an independent. It's a choice to revive California, revive it back to the great state that it once was, because it's so beautiful. We have Yosemite Valley in our backyard, and we get to the beach in 2 hours. If we don't choose a path of revival, then we continue down the path of ruin. And more people will start to leave. More and more people will start to distrust the system here in California. So it's time to choose a path of revival of California.
Well, I believe that can happen, and I wish you the best in your race. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. You hear that from the candidate and from me. It's time to get out there and make a difference.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.